We've got that.
And let's see how this is doing. Just doing a test right now to see. And we have microphones, microphones, those. Okay, we have technical issues. There's always tech stuff, Danny. And troubleshoot. Good. Very good. Yep, test. And that's got there. Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna do it in my voice.
Alrighty, I'm gonna just first introduce everyone to this. Absolutely. Alrighty, so for those who are in If I Were the World, if you could take a seat up here. Alrighty, can you hear it? Okay, perfect. Okay, so I know it's a little bit of a late start, and that's fine. So the way this is going to work, this whole event's going to work, is that we have three events for you. We have If I Ruled the World, and we also have Rapid Fire Rhetoric. And then the final event is going to be a prepared debate on DEI. So the first event is going to have three people. The way that works is one person's going to stand up saying, "If I ruled the world, I would blank," or "If I ruled Canada, I would blank." And quick disclaimer: anything said during this debate is for fun, right? nothing in here, nothing said during this whole event reflects any opinions on the school or the students. This is the same thing that people, this is the same disclaimer they make during debates between universities. Everything said in here is just for the sake of the sport. It's just like any kind of sports games. So if I ruled the world, it's this icebreaker game. So you might be hearing some quite outrageous claims or some outrageous answers to some of the questions. And it's also might get a little comedic towards the end. Who knows? So if I ruled the world, it's pretty much the way a president works in a news press conference. So they say, if I ruled the world, and then everyone else here is going to ask the questions, and then they have to get mics on there. They'll be asking the questions, and it's up to the ruler to defend themselves. And before we get into that, I just want to give a quick thanks to all the people who have been able to help with the debate club throughout the last year and a half. Jonathan Kerrigan and Teresa Golf. They have been able to help with getting this club running smoothly. So Teresa Golf also helped us gave us a place to meet when we really needed that, and she was very helpful with that. I would like to thank the DCSA because they're the whole reason we're allowed to organize this. They're the ones who keep the club going every single year. Then, as well as part of the DCSA, we also have Smash Grill. Yeah, Smash Grill. That's what you guys are called, eh? Yeah. So Smash Grill, they're the ones who are providing us food. If you guys are ever hungry, you guys are thirsty, go ahead and get up and treat yourself to some food, right? Other than that, I think we're all good to get started. All right. So the first one, Anaya, she's going to be the first ruler of the world.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Good evening. Thank you, Jacob, for the introduction. Yeah. Ooh. Yeah. That's really close to my mouth. Anyways. I don't like how close it is to me, but you know what? It's fine. So I'm starting off. My name's Anaya, and if I ruled the world, I don't know if any of you are familiar with the book The Giver, but it's a book about how there's a utopia where everything is even. Nobody is left out, and everybody gets a job and a place to live. If I ruled the world, I would do something similar in a way where once you reach a certain age, you are plopped into a specific category or a specific job, and as long as you're working or attending that job, you'll get active living wages, you will have a place to live, and you will have food to eat. Any questions? Yeah.
Yes, Ted Deroge of the BBC. This is a two-part. What age are you specifically picking when it comes to this choosing of their roles? And to the other part, who gets to really determine the roles every person's meant to do?
So that's a really good question. I'm glad you asked because I believe that once you are 16, 17, you should be able to work in the workforce, but minimal jobs so that it increases and you learn along the way. So that it's kind of like tradesmanship. So it would be you would start small and gradually as you get older and stronger, you would get more difficult jobs. So around 16, 17 is when that would start. So any children living under their parents or any guardian, they would just live and do whatever they wanted until it's their time to go
Okay.
ahead.
So when it comes to creating the group, what happens? What's the punishment for people who do not obey that? What happens if they decide not to go with their assignment?
So the system that I would have created or am creating in this scenario is they're stripped of any living housing privileges, food privileges, stuff like that. I know it's shitty, but it's also helpful as a functioning society.
Case of homelessness, because you said you're gonna strip them of housing and if that happens, there are gonna be a lot of people without house and without food. How are you gonna fix that situation? Because at some point, those persons are gonna start an uprising. So how are you gonna control those homeless now?
I actually haven't thought of that, which, I guess, like, if people were generous enough to give them places to stay, then I would allow that, but, that's only if people are okay with people living with them. But in terms of, like, it getting out of hand for, the homeless going into other places, there has to be at least 3 people working in that household. So, if there's, like, less than 3 people in that household, everybody in that household is out. So it's kind of like a point system. It's really cruel, I know, but it helps keep society functioning, but it also helps people to understand that, like, you can live, but you also have to work for it, and you basically get everything you want, you just have to play your part in society.
Yes, Ted Droge of the BBC. Trying to go back to the whole designation of jobs. Why age? Why not an intelligence test or a physical test?
Um, I feel like at a certain age, you are gonna say mature in a way, where you kind of have to start learning eventually. Um, they're free to use their childhood as they please, but they also have to know that once they hit a certain age, they have to start working in order to, gain the things that they would like in life. So, no IQ test or physical test because everything will be taught to you before you. And you're kind of just placed in a spot. You can pick your spot. I'm not saying that like we're choosing for you, we're sorting houses like Hogwarts. You get to pick, right? So nobody's discriminated against your mental IQ and your physical IQ, whatever that adolescent is comfortable with, they get to choose whatever field they want to go into. Go ahead.
Yeah. So would there be an age where someone would have to retire and they get their benefits after they retire, or or can you retire whenever you feel like retiring?
Good question. Good question. So I would say around the age 50 because it's a lot of like you get a lot of health problems around like mid 40s, 50s, and it becomes a safety hazard. And because we're not funding in that sort of way, better off that like once the health problems start rolling in, like people are taken care of in like a separate section. People can go visit and stuff like that.
Ms. Candidate, I have a question for you. Regarding funding for this new way of life, how are you? How do you plan to adequately fund this without having it go out of control, be biased in any certain way, or any type of manipulation?
Mhm. Um, Really good question. I didn't I didn't want anything like of money of the sort. In a way, it's kind of not like currency, but it's sort of like credits in a way where you get credits for groceries, you get credits for like stuff like that, and it's like a set amount for everybody. You kind of have to budget your way through that. Um, but you could always ask for more depending on how you're working, your workflow, your time management, how you can get um, extra benefits. And in terms of funding and bias, as long as everybody does their part, like I don't think anybody would actually be upset about it because they're picking their own jobs and they can switch jobs whenever they please. Um, for the credit system, yeah, based on work ethics, and there's not necessarily funding. Farmers, if you want to be a farmer, you get housing just the same as everybody else. You get food and credits just the same as everybody else. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mr. President. Idealistically, this sounds amazing. How do we make it happen? How do we make it into reality? And also, how do we encourage those to think outside the box?
Like think outside the box, as in like terms of like graphic design or like rebellion, because it's two separate things.
Hopefully, to be putting in the work. Because if we're all doing the same thing, how are we going to encourage going above and beyond if they're just going to get paid the same or given the same credit? And how are we going to make this good system happen?
Hmm. Um, Really good question again. So again, if you're not happy in a place that you are, then you can transfer jobs. Um, there's still consequences to not working. There will always be consequences to not working. It just keeps society right? I think it's just repetitive. You get to switch whenever you want, and it's freedom of career choice, right? That encourages people. Like you can be a graphic designer, you can be an engineer. It's whatever you fit yourself into are that you are wanting to be or whatever career you'd like. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, I just have one question.
Go ahead.
When it comes to, like, the whole idea of building this is it seems pretty utopian, and anytime you try to bring in utopia into the real world, it doesn't work. And so what's are you gonna have some sort of military to ensure that people don't rebel through violent means? What's your way of stopping people from rebelling against this entire system?
That is a good question also. I think all of you have had very good questions so far. So,
Yeah.
um, in terms of military, again, it would be under trustworthy government or not government per se, but like we do background tests, personality tests for sort of authority, like not a military, but like more policing, stuff like that, like special training, but more advanced training. So it's like covered all around. And to keep that in check, we would just have specialists kind of train people that just already have background checks and just roll, I guess.
We'll make this last question. Last question.
Madam President, what if this divides us and it doesn't unite us?
I'm not necessarily sure how it can divide us other than like people that would rebel. 'Cause yeah, revolutions can start, but at the same time, when everything is fair for everybody and you get to choose, there's not really like I don't know, there's not really like a high percentage chance that people would like rebel like that, you know? You basically get freedom to work however you want and you get free living, free food. Yeah, basically freedom, but it also helps us function as a society, you know?
Alrighty, sweet. Okay, wait, good job. Alright, everyone give her a round of applause. Janetta, you're up next, right? Alright, so this next person is Janetta, and now she'll be giving hers as well. Um, um, for audio, it only picks up what's on the mic. So if you wanna be heard, just make sure it's on the mic for recording. Alrighty, have at her.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jeanette. As you mentioned, I rule the world. I will put strict restrictions on mature games. So kids under 17 will not be allowed.
So, like, what restrictions specifically would you put?
For example, parent control of the games, where if you're under 18, you'll have a pop up or a complete restriction saying you're not allowed to enter or play the game.
Yes, Ted Jirogi of the Ted Jirogi Experience. Watch my Spotify. Anywho, so why the age 17? Why not the age 18 or 21 or why not lower?
Age 17, kids are at 17, they're already aware of the world. They're already aware of the mature things that are happening in the world. Putting it at 18 is practically saying putting it at 17 doesn't make sense. With kids under 17, they are new into the world. They're still practically babies. And with the mature games, they can influence their mind if they at such a young age. Sorry. So at 17, it's kind of into the older teens and smaller.
Madam candidate, when it regards the actual type of violence, I'm assuming it's like gore, violence, guns, warfare.
Grand Theft.
Sorry?
Grand Theft Auto. That
Okay,
type of
Grand Theft Auto. Okay, cool. Um, there's studies show that the violence that does that is seen in these video games, right, don't really always negatively impact the children. It's more of their social upbringing. Do we create a better social safety net for them and still be able to give these kids, or even at that point they're nearing adulthood. I mean, for 16, 17, they're nearing adulthood. They exposed to that type of thing. And anyway, my experience, and I don't really see it as too much as a thing as having to being able to show, prove to the youngsters of the next generation that everything in dosage, right? You can overdose on water, so but for this, there's a dosage for everything. Instead
So
of outright lemon.
with social, I mean, it's normal being normalized violence or contrary things in social society right now. So I cannot control that. It depends on how the parents bring up their kids. Not really depending on the game. That's so, but the game kind of have like a let's say an icing on top of the cake. It's there. So with the control on that game, I would not be able to prevent everything, but some things to a certain extent. Because with the game, it's immersive. It's audience orientated. Interesting. So and kids would want to play that. Some games, for example, Grand Theft Auto, Roblox, some games in Roblox and have mature content and it. Younger kids can be exposed to that. But with the parent control, I can try to prevent it, but with social, like not really control of that. Sorry.
Okay. So what's the punishment for kids who are caught playing these video games? Would you send them to jail?
If I could, I would, but no.
How long would you okay, follow-up question, how long would you send them to jail for
A day or so. But I wouldn't send them to jail just as a joke. But with the gaming series, I would at least take away 5 months of their allowing them to play games. And if that continue 1 year, 2 years, and after then they're banned from ever playing game that you found, then it might push the jail sentence. Before reaching to the kids too, I would have the parents held liable for because the parents do understand the impact of violent games, and they supposed to be able to help and control kids when videoing violent games. So I will put fines on the parents, and if they don't set in line, I will also put fines on the kids.
Okay, so Madam President, is there a form of identification that you're going to have in play for
Yes.
being able to play mature games?
So with playing the games, as soon as you enter, your webcam will be on, will automatically come on where the game, the developers will be able to see your face and see who actually plays the game, and you will be required to keep that webcam on. Because if it's turned off, somebody can switch with somebody else and play the game instead. So with the webcam being on, the game developers will be able to see who's actually playing the game and how they're playing.
Okay, how does that not infringe on people's privacy rights?
So, good question. I haven't thought about that. When you're entering the game, like normal, like TikTok, Instagram, they have that terms and policy you have to agree to. With every game that has that, you have to agree to it. You're doing for your privacy to be taken away with the web.
So if you're going to hold children accountable for playing violent and like mature video games, are you also going to hold them accountable for watching violent movies and shows?
So I'm not able to control that. It stems from the parents in the household that they come from, and the parents initially have to have control over that. Like you mentioned, social media, movies, they all have violent games, but kids aren't immersed into those movies and social media as much as games. Games today, statistics, there's more kids playing games and adults playing games. So with that, I'll be able to kind of protect them, but not restrict them from certain things. That makes sense.
Afternoon, Mrs. President. So if we illegalize games for the youth, wouldn't that make the temptation further? And if we're dealing with a situation by giving them criminal records, isn't that going to cause a bigger problem for our youth criminals, and temptation for bigger temptation?
Okay. So I'm not making games illegal to play. I'm trying to make it safer so the kids won't be able to view those mature stuff. With them wanting to take your mention your second question. With that, I mean it's games, and you have to have a parent to you're into the game or have a parent approval to access the game. And even if, regardless of whatever game you try to use, the webcam would automatically automatically able to see who's actually playing the games and to prevent them from actually playing it. Yeah. And if you decide to go more forward in market and buy games, well, still be a jail sentence or fine. I'm sorry.
I have a question. So I don't know if this has been asked yet, but are you gonna hold video game
Yes.
companies accountable?
Yes.
What's that look like?
So with video games, like I mentioned, you have to have some. I mean, there are some safeguards on video games already, but it has to be more stricter for younger kids, and it stems from them. And with them, they should be able to control what they're giving out to, they should be able to actually categorize which audience they should give those mature games to. Like for example, I have a younger brother, and he plays video games majority of the time. I don't want things like Grand Theft Auto have for him to see. So, and if they allow these kids to go ahead and play with it, they are liable for that. From the video game developers, the stores that sells the games also will be liable because they will be able to verify. If you're going into a store, you have to show an ID saying, "Well, I'm of age," or a parent saying, "Well, he's of age to receive games." And if that happens and they do give the game, then sure. But if not, then they also be held liable for giving these young kids video games.
President, what if it was the remedy for this young individual? What if it was therapy for this 16-year-old? You're gonna throw them in jail for trying to heal themselves?
Video game as a therapy. I mean, if in order to be therapy, you must be addicted to it. But like I said, with the prevention, you can be addicted and it cannot be therapy. But if it's, a therapist recommends it and it has the approval of a therapist and a parent, sure, no restriction. But if not, no, like
Actually, I do have one last question. So if a therapist prescribed it, or no, sorry, if they illegally prescribe, like, is there a punishment for the therapist? Is it
because they prescribe it, so they acknowledge the risk of them reviewing the games. And if anything should happen, for example, recently 2 days ago, there was a incident where a young kid because of the game of his favorite character died. He killed his entire family. He was planning to kill more. So they were aware of the video games being practically liable. So with a therapist and he giving acknowledgement to say, well, I'm gonna let him play this game because it's therapy. And if anything should happen, he should be held liable for it because he's aware of the consequence.
And what if like the child like comes from like a third world country where they saw war, they saw death, and they saw all those things you're talking.
I
If they
don't
played a video game, that wouldn't make them a killer, would it?
understand and I sympathize with them, but like I said, restrictions need to be there, parental control needs to be there, it has to be there. I do understand that you coming from a party view and acknowledge the war and the violence out there. So in here, I cannot make it an exception for one person because of that. Has to be everybody is one thing. So sorry.
Alrighty, so we have one last one, and I'm trying to figure out where he is. Ted? Teddy Rosa. Okay, so Ted's the last one. Just a quick reminder, whatever's said in here is just for the sake of the sport of debate, and it is all just for fun. So you go ahead, knock your socks off, Ted.
Thank you, fine sir. As recently elected of the ruler of the world, I have a vision for the future, and that vision starts with free energy, correction, free nuclear fusion energy. I'm planning on expanding the world's ability to generate energy across the globe with free, usable, sustainable. Any questions? Go ahead.
What if it ultimately leads to our children dying?
I will make sure it doesn't happen. That is my job as ruler, to make sure these things don't happen. Any other questions? Yeah, I have a question. So, how will you make the Gulf countries like Saudi Arabia and Qatar, which export oil, gas, like to the world, comply with your new laws? Well, again, as recent ruler of the world, I tend to have a very persuasive touch, and I kind of see the oil industry a little bit antiquated. So I would merely use my charming charisma to just go over there and give them a little nudge in the right direction to invest their dollars into the right type of energy sources.
Mr. Candidate, I have a question.
Ruler, but yes.
Ruler, sorry, sir, sorry. What are you gonna do with all the excess nuclear waste? How are you gonna deal with all that? Where are you gonna place it?
See, our current technology deals with nuclear fission, which is where most of the nuclear waste comes from. My investment is into nuclear fusion. See, nuclear fusion reduces the amount of waste that needs to be there, but maintains the amount of energy. My goal is by the next 5 years, right, we're able to take the minuscule amount of water that we have to generate a lot of power. I mean, recently, I think was it the president of Europe or was it the East that recently found a way to take a fraction of a fraction of the size of a raindrop and generate 69 megawatts. So I believe in the right time frame, I'm able to get this done.
Follow-up question, what if this goes in the wrong hands?
It's in my hands, and I don't think it's in the wrong hands.
Maybe it is, who knows?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Ruler, my question is why nuclear and not solar power, wind power, or water power?
See, nuclear, solar, and water may have proven its uses back then, but the amount of resources that we need to require to handle them is just too exorbitant. With nuclear fusion, it's even theoretically possible, and it's even possible in multiple labs that it can generate far more power and far less waste than any of these renewable resources that exist. So I intend to truly give the right solution to across the globe.
I just see.
Hmm.
What are some of these risks, and how are you going to prevent these risks, such as security risks, national defense risks?
Well, like I said, I tend to have a very persuasive touch. So when it comes to security risk, national risk, I tend to work with the current legal bodies, or whatever they call, to kind of handle all these risky situations. I believe we have the right experts have already developed the right means. It's just really convincing them to do the right thing. Yes, fine, sir.
Is this foresight coming from yourself?
No, I just came back from a huge uh, collaboration of fine experts. They gave me a fine information about what is necessary in this endeavor.
Okay, I have a question. Okay, so you've been using the word very persuasive a lot in the last little bit. So I just have a question, and kind of a comment. So if my memory's not great, but in the 1940s, I think there was one guy, very persuasive. So how do you defend yourself by not essentially being part two of whatever guy was in the 1940s that was also very persuasive? How are you not him 2.0?
See, that is a very superficial comparison. I see myself following the philosophies of what's his name, Qin Jin's Hong, who brought the unity of the Chinese government, Chinese states back in the what was it the BC 1600 BC. And I'm a bit of a fan of ancient Egypt, and it took one leader to bring in Lower Egypt and Upper Egypt. And my whole goal is to bring true unity across the planet. That's
Follow-up question. You plan to achieve that through renewable energy?
it's one of my many steps
Well,
in the
okay, I
plan.
know I'm not supposed to have a third follow-up, but what's another one off the top of your head?
Well, like I said, we do have a resource problem, and I do intend to have a little bit of funding, both government-wise and capital-wise, to work in trying to find more resources down in our sea. I think I think outside of renewable resource energy, we do not know the full extent of our world. I think going under the sea is perhaps our best chance. And hey, if we find all the resources we get, might maybe get a Nobel Prize and find the lost city of Atlantis.
Okay, Mr. World Leader. I have a question for since you wanted to go nuclear. Who is going to be working on this, and how are you going to protect them from all of the toxins and radiation?
Everyone's going to work on this in the sense of we're all working for our future in some way or form. Every person will do their best to bring together their knowledge, their strength, and their resources for this one endeavor of many, many endeavors. In a way, everyone and the right people. Silence of my intelligence, but yes, here's
You mentioned 5-year plan. What if it doesn't run to the 5 year? What if it takes longer? Because you mentioned it's water. And you, at some reason, every resource you can be available to, some water you can't really have that much of tea because people still have to have water. They still have to bathe. They still have to drink and so on. So if that 5-year plan does not meet, would you continue to push that implementation to be um?
of course these plans do take time, and since I'm already up here, I was discussing best people on board about what is the best way to execute this. And a short-term timeline of 5 years is 9. So my next order of business is to dissolve all governments and bring together the first planetary empire, where I bring together a safe and prosperous future for the evolution of humanity. Thank you, my enduring friend. Thank you, my enduring subjects. Have a good one.
Okay. Alrighty. Okay. Okay. Thanks, Dad. Alrighty. We're gonna have one more. We said we're gonna have three, but now we're gonna have one more. Danny, that's gonna be you. Right.
Hello, everyone. My name is Danny, and if I ruled the world, I would make everyone who has a driver license take an annual theoretical and driving test. Now, the reason I say this is because I lost a family member like a little while ago to a car crash on the highway, and I still kind of live with the trauma today. So it would be an annual test that everyone would have to do, make sure that safely and cautiously.
For those who do not take the test, what's the punishment?
Well, I don't wanna send people to jail just for not doing the test, so if somebody does not wanna do the test voluntarily, they would get license suspended for 6 months.
So you said you wanted to do it annually, correct?
Yeah.
So for regulating the timeframes for getting the renewal, is there going to be like you have to get it renewed before the day you got your driver's license? Do you have to like you have a grace period of like a week after you got your license, or is everybody getting their test at the same time?
So you would do 2 tests, a theoretical test and a driving test, just like how you would when you get your driver license, and you would have to do this test between the month of February and the month of April, kinda like same time you would file for your taxes.
President, how much would this cost us? And what if this money that costed us could have gone to another use such as healthcare, saving
Well, it wouldn't cost a lot of money because, um, doing a lot of people on the road favor because you're making sure that people crashing their cars. People crash their cars every day, especially on the 401 highway. Every time I've been on that highway, there's a car crash. It would be like better for insurance companies too, because they don't have to do a lot of paperwork.
Person know when they have to renew their license. Let's say I got my license in May, and February comes around and hasn't made the 1 year, the annual renewal time. How would I know that I should? Do I have to do that, or should I wait till May to have a license that will be initially my 1 year?
Well, when your license, you have your expiry date put in, and you should usually get your license like book an appointment to renew your license before your license expires so that you can drive the road.
Okay, so my next question is for the driving instructors or the people that are actually writing down the results for people's tests. are their contracts, going to be different from other people? Like, are they going to have to renew their driver's license at a different time? Because they're gonna be so busy, testing other people for their driver's license, they won't have time for themselves. So, would you give them a separate date? Are they contracted? Are they, like, full-time? Like, what's happening with that?
Driving instructors would have to have a full G license, and they can choose to they could choose to do it voluntarily, like in the months like between February and April, and and they would like be compensated for their work. Like if someone like wants to get paid, they will get paid.
So, quick question here. Would you be having a lot of traffic stops? Police officers, pulling people over to check to see if their license are up to date?
Well, ideally, yeah, but police officers shouldn't pull someone over just because they need to check if their license expired or they didn't do their annual driving test. But police still need to do their job and they need to like those license checks. Yeah.
So for every Canadian, it would be over 35 million Canadians per year having to do the test. If the test was like 20 minutes, 20 minutes of labor times 35 million, at least $35 million. Could you not put this money?
Well, I would say there's more than $35 million worth in damages of car crashes every year. As if you do this, you're making someone more like cautious and more self-aware when they're driving. Like, and most car crashes happen at like the traffic lights, at the like red light, the yellow light, green light, and people like like always do car crashes there. So if you have people doing more tests every year, then you would have less car crashes.
Based on the test, would it be a written test or a driving test? And how would you score the written test? If they score low, would they be still if they score low on the written test but pass the driving test, would they be able to have access to their license or not?
Well, when you'll have 3 attempts on your test, and if you fail 3 times, you won't get your license suspended, but you would have to retake it again. But you have to pay money to retake that test.
All right, Danny. Thank you for coming up. Well, give a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. All right, everybody. We're going to get into the nitty gritty of it. But before we get into the real debate, I know some of you guys look hungry. Food has been provided by the DCSA, sorry, by Smash Kitchen and Grill. My apologies. You're not ruled anymore, buddy. Come on. But go ahead, guys. In 5 minutes we'll be starting rapid fire rhetoric. Thank you. We're not starting yet, ladies and gentlemen, but can I please have the candidates for the next game come up to the tables, please? In 2 minutes. Sorry. This portion of the debate is known as rapid fire rhetoric. You may be wondering what that is, so I'll explain it. What basically it's run down, there's be 3 topics, and it's as the name implies, it's gonna be rapid. We're gonna be switching between the 3 topics every 15 minutes. So our contestants are to come up and verse each other. They're going to remain in the same teams the entire time. So it's up to them to be able to defend their point and their position. And I think now all the candidates are ready. If I may please have Foma, Kenny, Mecca, and Sean to the tables, please. Let's give them a round of applause. And little thing I forgot to mention, they know the three topics that are happening, but when and where they're gonna happen, they don't know. Everything ready? Yeah. All right. First topic, should drones be banned in war? I please have the two sides announce what side they are on the aisle.
So I'm Sean. We're on the side of um, keeping drones in warfare and not banning them.
Folks, you heard it there first. Now, each side will be given 2 minutes to state their opening statement. First, let's go with the side that's for. That's right. That's defending drone warfare. Your time starts now.
Good day. My name is Emeka Okafor. I am the co-president of the Technological Welfare Drones. So I want to say that drones is a technological advancement due for the improvement of human lives, especially in warfare. So the reason why I say this because drones are a technological weapon, high precision. We both know in terms of war, emotions come high and low, and collateral damage are done to civilians most of the time, and even to the other side of the enemy. With our position of technological advantage, we could bring more aid than damage in aiding citizens, leading to safeguarding and a higher aim precision for the
All right. We'll be handing it over to now Kenny and Foma. Time starts now.
As the Department of Defense, we are firmly against the use of drone warfare for the reasons that it is not ethical. We have spoken together, we have come together, and we have seen that instead of seeing drones as a tool that can aid warfare, it is rather a tool that creates inhumanity, distance from killings in the forms of people using controllers as if it's a video game to cause damage, cause warfare, and rain hell on innocent civilians as they will be the targets, not enemy drones in other countries.
So you mentioned the point of drones being more archaic, but would they be more archaic as opposed to a F-22 fighter jet that's flying at 1,000 feet and dropping bombs in there, or a drone that can fly at maybe 10 feet, fly into buildings and take out the target that way without destroying the building itself?
I hear you. I hear you asking why an F-22 jet would be more or less dangerous than a drone because it drops from a high altitude, right? Why drop from somewhere inaccurate when you can arm the drone with a bomb instead? That's what's going to be done. It's not just having bullets. It's not just flying into a building. It's striking not only from long distances, in remote areas. It's when someone is distant from the scene of the area of where they're striking using the drone.
You're thinking about drone as in just one drone. But you can't say that a drone's casualty is low because you use it in huge amounts. Imagine this. Instead, let us say you have like 100,000 fighting. If you replace all those soldiers with drones, do you that do you believe has more capacity for damage? The drones, 500,000 drones or 500,000 soldiers?
I would argue that you're saying that what would be the difference between a soldier and a drone? Because a soldier is quite capable of doing the exact same amount of work as a drone. Because as we can see, for the past 50, 60 years, if not more, I'll even go back 100 years, if not more, we see that war in itself is very destructive. Where with drones, you can make it, like I was saying before, make it more precise as compared to a soldier.
I'll answer your question. The big difference between a soldier and a drone is that drones are sustainable, they're reusable, and they're cheaper. The use of drones in war makes war cheaper. When war becomes cheaper, it means that it's easier to launch a war at people. Those countries that want to wage war at other countries don't rethink. In a war, when you want to have a war against another country, you consider things like manpower, cost. But when you have drones to replace the manpower, replace all of this, and it's sustainable and reusable, you can basically call it back after it has done damage. It makes war cheaper. It makes war more scalable, and that's not what we want. That's why drones should not be used in war.
You are right when you said drones would make war cheaper. But for what sake of it? The money reserved or put into war fixed amount for a country so that they can defend themselves from an enemy attack. Any additional funds would be used for the welfare of the citizens and residents, so as not cause additional damage to the whole nation as a whole. So a country cannot go outside the whole budget or rather the welfare amount for their citizens for the sake of the war. But that being said, you did mention something about drones having a bomb. If drones could have bomb attached on them and they be precise. But keep in mind, we're not talking about drones in the hands of civilians, in the hands of the military. Them being regulated, tagged, and being high precision only is by those who trained highly. So no ordinary civilian can just take a hand on a military drone and fly it around to cause chaos. This is in the hands of governments, highly regulated.
You know what? I absolutely adore the point regarding drones being in the hands of the military and not the civilians, because that's not our future. That won't even be our present. Do you know what one of the largest trades are internationally? The arms dealing trade, and drones will be no exception. You see, if you create something en masse that is uniform, anonymous, and incredibly dangerous, you're creating another open market for arms dealing. This is not a weapon. This is not a sniper just standing on a building and shooting someone. Even that's not traceable. No. We have a uniform government drone sold around the world, easily being able to be used for assassinations.
Sorry, Jenny. If you just keep the mic to your mouth, please, just a little bit closer. And just for reference, guys, keep your mics on the whole time. Okay.
I believe you can respond to what my partner just said.
I said I adored the point that you said about drones in the situation that you had called them, right? However, drones are a form of weapons and they will be used in arms dealing. Arms dealing is one of the largest, it is the third largest trade internationally in the world. Drones will be no exception. Why use a sniper from a long distance when you can pilot a drone from the safety of your own home and take out the targets that you want? Danger with drones, as we said, is that costs are much lower than sending soldiers out. Another issue is we have military personnel targeting people and using drones to fight. It brings drones into civilian areas. Now, these civilians that you were talking about, the war efforts being cheaper and funding them, is so counterintuitive. It creates danger in those civilian environments. What do you have to say to that?
All terms of war, even if it's with human labor or drones, civilians, civilians to environment will still be affected. It's either it use sorry, either we use manpower to affect civilian neighborhoods, or with the technology that we can disarm and disable at the free will of the controller pod. So as you said, not to be petty, but our biggest trade route is not guns. But let me keep that aside. This first. I'm sorry. That's correcting. But
May I interject?
no.
Less than 5 minutes remain.
To call back on what you said on how it could be dangerous if drones are out unregulated in the hands of civilians. That's if an enemy attacker chooses to use drones on us as as a nation and a country. But let's keep in mind, drones are not high detectable warfare. Drones are easily destroyable. Damaged by not just the harms of other human beings, but also by air pressure an easy strike or an easy stone thrown in the air. So drones are not hard equipment to destroy or even to um just a matter of precision of human factor and well technological tracking.
We're talking about making drones making war scalable. I'll ask you, do you know how many
Yeah, define
casualties
scalable in that sense.
makes casualties more? The capacity of harm big. That is what scalable is in this context. Now I'll ask you, do you know how many casualties there were in World War One?
I'll give you a rough estimate. I believe it was somewhere hundreds of thousands.
That's a far stretch. It's from 15 million and above to 20. Now let's talk. Do you know
Hold on, or sorry, are we talking like
military and
military
civil?
or are we just
A combination
okay?
of both.
So then, yeah.
Now let's talk about World War Two. Do you know how many there were?
So if we're including casualties, and then are we also putting in the Holocaust casualties as well? Because that will push the number well into the millions. I would give it anywhere from 15 to 20 million.
It's too far, 70 to 85 million. Now, what do you think the difference was? Yes, please, after this fact checking. What do you think the difference was between those two wars?
Difference between World War One and World War Two.
Why do you think the number of casualties increased from World War One to World War Two?
Well, one of the major increases was so for World War One, it was all trench warfare. World War Two, it was urban. We saw urban warfare. We saw the development of the Air Force, starting a little bit in World War One, but more so in World War Two. We saw the development of naval warfare, and we also saw the development of um, infantry warfare, such as tanks, cannons, machine guns.
Fantastic answer. Now, what do you think the number of casualties will be with respect to what World War One and World War Two already was if we introduce drones to war?
I would argue that with drones, because they're so precise, that the casualties would be as we can see in the war in Ukraine, a lot of the war fighting going on right now is starting to be with drones. And we've seen footage of drones actually flying it. Back to my earlier point, flying into buildings and taking out the enemy that way, as opposed to leveling an entire city block. They're taking out maybe a room or two.
So basically, you're hoping that because this war will not have drones, the number of casualties and damage that are able to inflict will decrease. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, with drones, it would help reduce overall casualties, and
Absolutely
also
not.
too, it would also reduce like I said, instead of dropping a bomb from 20,000 feet in the air and taking out an entire city, we're using an entire artillery unit taking out an entire city block. You can take out, as we can see during the war in Afghanistan, the United States Air Force, I'll use the Air Force, um, they have a massive drone fleet. They were targeting specific buildings and specific vehicles as society taking out and kind of carte blanching and hitting everything.
Now, if you
All right, folks, one second. Closing statements.
yes, I'll close.
Go ahead.
If you give a weapon of mass destruction, such as drones, in large amounts, warlords who are also capable of mass destruction, what we're going to see is an exponential increase from the number of casualties in World War War if we do have a World War. Hence, drones should be banned. Let's keep things simple.
I would like to close that we shouldn't lose faith in technological advancement because this technology will adapt enough for the cause of winning a war or destroying property to preserve the lives of not just citizens, but of the soldiers who are being drafted, people as young as 18 years old, to preserve their lives and to preserve their life by giving a higher precise aim in what we are choosing to strike. We are not choosing to strike the people or the property. We are choosing to defend.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, what do you think about that round? A round of applause. All right, now to our second topic. And just a little note for my candidates up here. Sorry, my competitors. Keep the mic close to your mouth. Don't move it too much. Don't want too much feedback for the crowd. Okay? Next prompt. Should Canada be a part of the US? May I please hear the two sides? Just yes or no. And thank you.
Good day, everyone. So I am the Premier of Ontario, Emeka Okafor, with the Prime Minister of Canada.
I'm Sean French. I'm the current Prime Minister of Canada. In case you didn't know, there was an election. I won. Thank you.
And we have decided, for the good of the Canadian nation and the North American Confederation, to join the United States. This agreement was done not for selfish purposes, but to better the lives of citizens in North America.
All right, Mr. Premier. All right.
Thank you.
Now down to the opposition. Go ahead, man.
My name is Kenyan Bahadur. Once again, I'm the Chief of Defense of the Federal Government of Canada. I'm here with my trusted partner.
Afama
We believe it is absolutely within Canada's best interest to never unite with the United States. They have showed us our tariffs. They have showed us a lack of care for the allyship that we have given. We believe that it is dangerous to trust an ally who has decided to stab us in the back one too many times. We have seen that they have burnt more than one bridge. We do not believe it is in our best interest to join the United States.
Keep that fire for the round. All right. And please have a 2-minute opening statement from Sean and Emeka, please. Thank you.
So we, as the Prime Minister of Canada, as just mentioned, we believe that becoming a part of the United States would be vital for our citizens, as it would provide security both financially and militarily. It'll increase and strengthen our economy. As mentioned, everybody knows right now our current issue with the states is tariffs. So if we became a part of the United States, tariffs would be gone. So it would reduce the price on everything. Everything would be a lot cheaper. And we would have slightly more rights and freedoms if we became a part of the United States.
And I want to just mention it out that we would have a good benefit from aligning with our brother country, the United States, due to the fact that we as Canada have a heavy food reliance due to trade with the United States, especially in states like Minnesota, Nebraska, and the Twins. But I will leave the statement on to you guys.
because the United States historically, especially now lately with our tariffs being implemented on us, has been aggressive and dangerous, we refuse as members of Canada to bend the knee to the United States. It is true that we have shown reliance to them. However, we have many other bridges, especially in Europe, that we have not burnt bridges with, unlike the United States. We have many friends, and especially with Donald Trump in power, the United States, with a lack of health care and a right, Second Amendment, to bear arms, it looks more like a monarchy than a democracy.
All right, folks, so we're going into our 10-minute open discussion. Go ahead, Hamik.
Just to lay it out, we are still under a monarchy. Right now, we are under a Commonwealth monarchy, under the British Kingdom, a collapsing empire, which we had Canada stuck to the tip of it. So, just to build upon that, we aren't bending the knee to Canada. Sorry, bending the knee to the United States. We are joining an alliance with for the betterment of our citizens. Just to open it up, we have at this time of war and at this time of national tension, with World War III lying around the side and Russia developing their greater military power, we as Canada, we are sitting ducks. So if we drop an alliance with the United States now, we would have a greater military difference, a larger geographical mass aiming to defend every one of us. Because we all know that Canada's military defense is nothing but crap right now. We have the lowest, sorry, not the lowest, but the whole Western scape, we have second to the last military build-up in both our armed forces, trade labor, and our manpower, which is unfortunate.
I hear your statement regarding wartime sentiment. Are you willing to throw away what it means to be a Canadian just for the slightest bit of safety of a war that may not occur?
And so, what does it mean to be Canadian?
Through our 150 years of being a country, we came together as a nation of divided people in one space to show, you know what, I respect you. You know what, we are different, but we can be kind. Maybe we don't have to rush headfirst into war, because what are Canadians known to be around the world? Not just kind, polite, respectful, diligent. We are a new country, and we have a unique position within the world, especially with social media, to show what it means to be a united nation, not in tenure, but in a group of people. Are you willing to throw that away for a war that may never occur, especially when we have allies for trade to keep our GDP, our gross domestic product, up?
Just to make that clear, that's not what it means to be a Canadian. That's what it means to be a sorry. That's what it means to be a cultural resident of your province. But as a Canadians are mostly nice, respectful, and apologetic. That does not apply to Quebec. Each Canadian province has their own cultural traits. Ontarian has never lived the same life as someone from Nova Scotia, native Acadian, who came from the French Isle and was forced by the British to apply to their needs. And keep in mind, each Canadian, sorry, citizen of both Southern Canada and Upper US share very strong cultural similarities. Being that someone as from Minnesota, someone from Manitoba, are the greatest highlight.
I'd just like to add on a little bit. So you're talking about um, willing to lose. Are we willing to lose our Canadian identity if we merge with the U.S.? And I would argue, who's to say we would have to lose our Canadian identity? Why can't we help and share our values with our future fellow citizens of this great nation? We can call it North America. As we see, Canada is a very diverse country as well as the United States. So we have similarities there. You go to places like New York, and you go to Texas, um, California, or you go to Montana. There's a lot of differences between each of those a lot of differences in between our provinces in Canada. So even though yes, there's a lot of differences, we still have a lot of similarities. We still have that one um, United Canada identity, and we can share that with our future.
I just wanted to touch on your partner's statement. I was rather interested. I was rather surprised about his statement regarding Quebec, because as we have Quebecois people likely in the room, as well as Quebecois Canadians that are a large part of our elected force, as well as our Quebecois people in Canada, has a large tie to our British and our French allies. I would like to say it is incredibly important that their say does matter. I think it's quite a strange thing to write it off immediately as you had.
Whatever US swallows, it chews, or rather, whatever it chews, it swallows. As Donald Trump said in one of his most recent interviews, he said that Canadians are nasty people. That's the exact line he said, and I'm not rephrasing it. So, how can you want expect to retain your Canadian values under a leader who has directly called you that?
I also just quickly wanted to touch on, are you aware that our Constitution of Canada, which is young, 150 years, had we gone under the rule of the United States, we would be adopting their constitution, which does mean the right to bear arms, which does mean our free healthcare, which is a form of insurance, would also be abolished. Are you okay with losing that?
Okay. See if I can try and break this down. So when it regards to the monarchy, yes, we are part of a monarchy. But I would argue right now they're more of a ceremonial slash figurehead part of Canada. They have some say, but a lot of their stuff and a lot of their powers is designated through our bills of rights, our constitution, our parliament. So again, they're more of a ceremonial. So I'd argue in that case that that would be okay, and I'm sure there would be some people here that it would be okay to lose the monarch family because they are um, an old time, and we are moving forward in that way of ruling a country just doesn't work in these days.
I definitely see what you mean, especially regarding um, our how there's certain positions of power in the British Empire in Canada. However, as you had just stated yourself, it is symbolic. As you had just stated, it is a symbolism of our connection and our trust with Britain, as well as the Quebecois are a symbol, a piece that we take care of France, a symbol of our allyship with France. I see absolutely no reason why we should forego the trust, especially when it's deeply rooted in the small history of Canada, to go for a country that is tariffing and taxing us. And I do understand what you mean. I hear you when you say, oh, well, the United States may not have that intention with us. Does it look like after the President of the United States, which seems to move mostly on his own, calling us terrible, nasty people, has the intention of doing a small interjection in our country and making no changes? Are you willing to take that risk and become the 51st state?
I would argue with Donald Trump, as controversial as he is, he's only a temporary person. He's only in there for 4 years because as under the United States, under their constitution, presidents can only serve a maximum of 8 years. So he's already done 4, so he's got 4 more to go, and then that's it. So when that I think we can all agree we can live with the 4 years as much as we can. It's gonna be tough, but I think everybody here can agree that we as Canadians are a tough breed, and we can push through, the 4 years of the Donald Trump, and then going into becoming a part of America, it'll just solidify us even better and make our lives that much more better.
Are you guys satisfied with that, or would you like a closing statement as well?
Go ahead.
Closing statement.
So, by becoming the 51st state of the US, we are basically becoming friends, own enemy. And in all our conversations, let's not forget the indigenous people. The US has a history of breaking treaties with the indigenous people. Whereas the Canada, all of us have a long history of keeping our treaties through reconciliation, land agreements, and everything we do. So if we become a part of the US, there is no guarantee that they will accept us, and the indigenous citizens, when they haven't even accepted their. Thank you.
Was we like that round, didn't we? Now we're going on to a final one. In my opinion, probably the best one. Are we ready, folks? Should drugs be decriminalized in Canada? May I please have the person for it, the team for it, go up first?
Once again, I am Kenyon Bahadur with the Department of Defense, and I'm joined with
Afama Igwe.
part of being with the Department of Defense means that we are charged to the care. We believe that drugs themselves make people dysfunctional and it is damaging to the country. We believe that taking away the consequence as every action has a consequential reaction that comes to it. To take the consequence away from people using drugs and dealing drugs is incredibly dangerous. It sets a precedent that we no longer care to hold people who are doing things wrong to the mistakes that they made. It shows a lack of care and a slap in the face of rehab.
So I'm Sean, in case anybody didn't know. I'm on the board of um, the decriminalization of drugs from Canada. We stand in favor of decriminalization of drugs with the belief that it will significantly reduce crimes, not just in Canada, but globally. Decriminalization offers an opportunity to break the cycle of organized crime, and dismantle dangerous drug enterprises that have caused harm to communities for decades. When drugs remain criminalized, they are pushed into illicit organizations which profit from the misery and addiction and creation of violence. By revoking the criminal penalty, we remove the power from these criminal networks.
Those, those are our opening statements, I believe. All right, we're going to 10-minute discussion. All right, wait, folks.
We wholeheartedly believe that to decriminalize drugs, as we had said, creates a dangerous precedent that people who are doing something illegal, like drugs, especially because a drug user is highly likely to influence their network. Think about that. Someone who abuses drugs, maybe they go to school, they most definitely go to work. They often frequent public spaces. They are likely to get their friends involved with drugs as well, especially when you decriminalize them and make them easy to access. There are consequences for a reason. Why do you believe that we should decriminalize drugs?
I do believe that we should decriminalize drugs because, and then again, I do hear you and understand your fear of the problem. But it isn't a problem, it's a solution, the harm reduction. Because as we decriminalize drugs, we regulate it in legal society. We can't just let drugs be a constant commodity on the food network or in shoppers drug marts. No, we regulate it as a government, and we have to acquire it just like our alcohol problem, or regulated in the US, but in Canada, there's only one brewer. In Ontario, there's only one sales store. In the rest of Canada, you need at least to be 19 years old to buy alcohol. Who says you can't do the rest for drugs? Just to address your points on how drug users can influence people around them, you cannot. Because most people here have their free choice, free will, and self control, make their own choices in life. Just because someone does or eats something doesn't mean to affect them. neighboring partners to actually take on that same commodity. Just because it's a vice doesn't mean it's mandated.
You know what? I'm glad that you decided to bring up specific drugs. So let's start naming the drugs that we're deciding to legalize. Let's talk about fentanyl. Let's talk about cocaine. Let's talk about heroin. Where does the line draw? Why are we allowing people saying, oh, you know what? They have self-control. Or you know what? These drugs take away self-control. These drugs take away one person's agency to work, to provide for their family. We're going to watch families fall apart. Should we allow decriminalization of drugs to occur?
Can I just interject there? You're saying fentanyl. We have to be careful because there's two versions of fentanyl. Because fentanyl is actually a legal drug that's used in hospitals for pain medications. Um, but there's also the fentanyl that obviously is made in it's quite deadly. Both are pretty bad, but they're not. It like fentanyl overall isn't fully like illegal.
And just to add on the point, as drugs now are decriminalized, most drugs as cannabis and your basic anarch painkiller can be illegally traded and laced with this harmful topic. Most people, when drugs are decriminalized, often find ways to sell counterfeit products. So your marijuana, as you're smoking to have a quick relief, would be laced with with some harmful parts of PCP, which could cause brain damage because it's unregulated by the government, because it was illegal, it was counterfeit. Thank you.
You know what? I like that point. I definitely find it interesting. The thing is, I want to ask why, in a world where drugs are decriminalized, why should I worry about a drug being laced when I can go and buy PCP? Right? Because what you were saying is you're decriminalizing drugs right now. You're allowing these dangerous drugs to go on the street. It's nice that you want to allow one vendor to take control of that. However, that does not mitigate the situation at all. These rules are in place because we know the dangerous and damaging things that can come, the cycle of addiction that people can fall into by having these drugs in their system at all. The rules and regulations are there to protect people from ever getting involved in them, especially when you talked about the age of 19 being to buy alcohol. If we allow that for dangerous things such as cocaine, it sets a horrifying precedent. 19-year-olds, grown adults as well, are not powerful enough mentally, physically, to dodge and avoid these addictions. Why do you believe putting them under one vendor creates such a great change that it should be allowed within the country?
You're saying I kind of let me put it this way. So okay, so to one of your points, with drugs already drugs are criminalized as it is, so we already have an issue with drugs. There's a saying that is what that is prohibited is most with drugs right now. They're we already have an epidemic. With this, decriminalizing drugs, rid of the criminal aspect. So imagine you're an 18-year-old and who decided to try a bit of heroin. We'll go with heroin. Not too much to not to sell it or anything, just to try because you're curious. And as you're walking home, you get picked up by a police officer. Made a mistake. You got picked up by the police. Now you got to go to court. You're found guilty. You got to get charged criminally, and now that's going to ruin your career. So when you go up to apply for a job, one of the questions would be, "Have you ever been convicted of a felon?" And you would have to write down yes, and it would prevent you from getting that job, and therefore it would repeat the cycle because now once you've got that record, and in some cases you could actually gone to jail. There's been cases where people have gone to jail for 20 years for having an ounce of marijuana on them and having their lives completely ruined. So what we're arguing is getting rid of decriminalizing the drugs so it's not ruining these people's lives so they have a second chance, so they're not going back to the same state over and over and over again and being locked up for the most minuscule thing ever, which I think is very wrong, very unjust, and huge weaponization of the justice system.
The definition of insanity is the same thing over and over, right? So if you look at countries that have tried to decriminalize drugs, for instance, Portugal tried to decriminalize drugs, and they're actually seeing an increase in the drug use. Oregon tried to decriminalize drugs, and they're seeing an increase in drug use. What this means is that when it rains in court, open it up, going to increase the amount of drugs people use. You should also understand that the drug distribution is actually a business, which means that you cannot create a central hub because you'll be putting certain groups of criminal gangs out of business from producing these things. Centralizing it or making one particular place where people can buy drugs from doesn't get rid of the fact that people are still producing it illegally. Now, what this means is that you're going to be having a lot of people keep purchasing those drugs, and have dysfunctional people. I understand that you don't want people to have their lives ruined for the use of drugs. However, the moment you take away a criminal aspect of something, the moment you take away the consequences of the use of something, you make it easier for people who might have been avoiding doing it because of those consequences to do it. He also said that it's a choice that socially you can choose not to just, but that's not true. We are social animals. Everybody is a social person. Once you see your partner doing something, you're going to do the same. So by making it free to use, basically taking away the criminal aspect of it, saying drugs are okay, make use of it, and that is what we don't want.
Okay, so I hear you on that. I would say, what do you say to the poor families that have lost loved ones that have been terrorized by these massive drug cartels, whose sole money-making business is drugs? Like, what would you say to them? Because with us, we are decriminalizing the drugs and removing that power from them and reducing the violence, and influence that these drug cartels have.
If a poor family said, Kenny, I'm very hurt by your system. Drugs are criminalized. I lost a loved one because of a cartel. I would say to them, you know what? I'm sorry, but you are the one in a million. I'm worried about the 999,999 other families who are in danger of living in a drug abuse household. We're not talking about one person. We're talking about mom and dad using cocaine and using heroin, and children in the family growing up with that without a safe family structure. We're talking about children being exposed to drug users, teachers within classrooms, gym teachers, science teachers. We're talking about police officers. We're talking about lawyers. The same people you're worried about getting sent to jail, getting drug abusers, representing them in court. Our whole system relies on people teaching other people helping other people. One of the things that's so important is a rational state of mind. To strip humanity of its rational state of mind sets a dangerous precedent that we can no longer trust each other. Drug abuse clouds our clarity. Drug abuse takes away what we can give to each other most, which is trust, which is clarity.
Just to open up your mind a bit,
Closing statements, please. Intertwine the 2 points. You're closing with that, and then they'll do the same.
I don't understand your fear of why you'll be afraid of drug users being in contact with non-drug users. But that is segregation and an ethical amount of privileges around people. Because keep in mind, in society right now, some drugs being used taboo are legal, such as antidepressants, such as legal marijuana, such as ashwagandha for ADHD users. common here, if these products are outlined as, or I'm being used, using them for my medical instances, we consider them safe. But keep in mind, this legalization of all drugs, not for the sense of, well, you can just buy them and a bunch of college students use them at night. No, for medical and leisure purposes, handled by professionals, by people who train disseminate these drugs and to display them out to citizens. We are not selling a Commonwealth product. We are decriminalizing solution to citizens, no matter the bounds it may have.
I hear you, especially in regards to selling drugs. In regards to the medical point of view, I have not heard much on that. My greatest concern is that at the Department of Defense, we are a defensive agency because we have seen destruction. Now, you may call that fear, we call it care, and we call that love of Canadian citizens. It is a dangerous, an incredibly dangerous precedent to set where we allow drugs to roam free within Canada. We are a first world country with our free health care. A lot of our powerful systems can be lost because our agency is lost because we can no longer trust each other in a world where drug addicts run free, roam the streets, and unfortunately convince friends and family to continue using drugs.
There we go, ladies and gentlemen. And that wraps up our rapid fire debate. Thank another round of applause for the two teams. Handshake, guys, handshake, handshake hands. And now I'm handing over to Ted to be moderating the final event of the night, main event, DEI. I know we'll encompass, well, Ted will go over it.
Wow. All right, all right. So now it's time for the main debate. What we're all here for. The one that each of these debaters here had trained for the last week with a Rocky Balboa has anime training art type of style. They have come here prepared to say their points. Also, quick disclaimer, again, these are not their personal opinions, but they've come to argue each of their sides. So now, without taking too much time, we have Sean, Danny, Jacob, and Anthony here to debate DEI. Advancing fairness or undermining merits. Each of you guys will have 5 minutes to go with an intro. So we'll start off with Thor, DI. It's us.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you guys for coming. First of all, just context of some of that immense training he was mentioning. I turned butter yesterday, so like that was what I spent the few precious hours. Anyways, to get into it. DEI is an unfathomably complex subject. The specifics of policy implementation in the myriad organizations affected by its mandates, even more so. It's impossible to comprehensively debate these complexities, so we can't debate them. Additionally, it's naive to assume the policies widely implemented at present aren't deeply flawed. We won't assume that. We concede the DI is a movement in need of certain recommendations, but we will not concede that it deserves abolition or is otherwise a failed endeavor. We came here today not to focus on DEI's execution, but its ethics. But what is DEI? DEI is not cancel culture. It's not the desire to feel like a victim for social validation, and it's not performative acts to alleviate white guilt. What DEI is the recognition of the interdependent nature of the world we live in. It's an admittance that no man is an island and that nobody makes it through this life without help. The phrase to lift yourself up by your bootstraps has its etymological roots in a sarcastic remark about an impossible task, because no amount of willpower will overcome Newton's third law of motion. In reality, every person who believes they have bootstrapped themselves to success are in reality too enamored with the effort it takes to climb the metaphorical ladder to notice the effort invested by others into building this ladder of opportunity. Further, they fail to notice that not everyone has ladders, much less ladders that are equally tall or even equally safe. What DI is the commitment to building new ladders that reach further down to raise those left behind by our current system, and ladders that raise us to new heights missed by the telescopic monolithic pillars of success people are currently forced to conform to should they desire a part of the ever-expanding pie. Additionally, we are further prepared to argue that the issues present within the movement are manifestations of deeper political and economic realities that the rescinding of DEI efforts will not remedy. This is evident by the massive failures of science and society that happen independently of DEI efforts. Famous examples include oxycodone being as proved non-addictive. The FDA officer on the case was not a DEI officer. The countless biochemical impacts of leaded gasoline, microplastics, PFAs, etc., that aren't addressed by academic history meaningfully, regardless of what ethics are popular in politics of the day. And to those who feel that scientific censorship is caused by DEI initiatives, are hopefully experiencing a rude awakening as the Trump administration pulls grants for reasons as arbitrary as the word woman contained within the proposals. DEI is not simply reverse racism. In essence, DEI isn't even about race. DEI seeks to care for victims of all kinds, be they veterans or just unfortunate enough to be born to troubled parents. It's about filling the cracks in society that people fall through due to no fault of their own. This endeavor is noble, and I don't think that anyone would disagree that this is with the desire to provide opportunity to as many people as possible. So why then is the DI movement being so popularly condemned? Admittedly, there have been implementation issues, but I'd argue what we are experiencing is far more pernicious than that. The DEI movement is serving as a red herring. Condemnation is largely the manifestation of frustrations with the changing world, the feeling that it's leaving us behind. Times are uncertain and scary. People want to go back to when things were easier to understand. The reality is that time doesn't move backwards. It's not just straight white males suffering from devaluation, it's everyone. Human rights were only venerated as a concept because human beings were economically and politically valuable. We are rapidly approaching a time then when that will no longer be the case. DEI is the belief that the systems we build today, the systems that shape our futures, should be consciously designed by us in service of human beings. To abolish DEI is to concede our fate to the cold, unfeeling optimization of systems that may conceivably view no human being as possessing sufficient merit in the near future. My team is proud to defend the veneration of humanity and the diverse beauty of human experience, as opposed to the veneration of efficiency and dehumanizing form.
Sorry, apologies, but 30 seconds.
I want to end on two quotes. One by Peter Drucker, that there's nothing so useless as doing with great efficiency that which should not be done at all. And my second quote is, the more efficient you are at doing the wrong thing, the wronger you become. It is much better to do the right thing wronger than the wrong thing righter. If you do the right thing wrong and correct it, you get better. By Russell L. Ackoff.
So our side will be defending why DEI is undermining meritocracy. So DEI is attempting to create equal outcome for everyone while maintaining racial, cultural, gender, and sexual identity, diversity, thus being inclusive. Unfortunately, what diversity of the DEI has led to is it has led to racial and gender quotas, which is race-based and gender-based hiring, which is inherently racist and sexist. This also undermines the meritocracy because anytime you try to hire more of a specific group, the hiring pool becomes less qualified. This is true when taking things into account that do not matter, especially like race, gender, and sexuality. Because guess what? Those things don't matter. And yet my opponent is going to attempt to argue why race, gender, and sexuality does matter, that we need to hire these people. This is the exact opposite of what Martin Luther King Jr. fought for. The second thing is what equity has become. So equity is an attempt to create an equal outcome for all. He was arguing, he mentioned, was probably more along the lines of equality of opportunity. Unfortunately, the way equity has become, it's become equal outcome for all, which, by the way, is not realistic when you're applying that to tens of millions of people. That's just Canada. Hundreds of millions of people, unbelievably impossible. The second thing is inclusivity. Inclusivity used to be removing laws, regulations, and rules that actually prohibited people from excluding based on identity. I'm sure you're all aware that there used to be white-only spaces. Inclusivity was like, okay, get rid of that. That's not inclusive. Unfortunately, it's gone a bit too far now. Now we need to make sure people feel included, which, by the way, through a measuring standpoint, is incredibly difficult to measure. I'm sure all of you have seen those "everyone is welcome" signs. And it'll usually be everyone's welcome, and there will be a pride flag attached to it, or the LGBTQ flag attached to it. You know, as if they weren't already welcomed in that area. There's no laws prohibiting them from an office refreshment, yet we still have those signs. And the ironic thing about that is that they put that up there, yet there's no straight flag, there's no straight little line on the flag. I don't know what the implication of that is, but if you're saying, "Hey, all is welcome, but we're leaving this little group out," by the way, little group meaning the majority of people, leave this little group out, I don't know what the implication is for that, but that doesn't seem very inclusive. So my opponent will attempt to argue that the reason we need DEI is because historically, groups have been discriminated against. Fair enough. Yeah, that's fair. But how far do we go back? When do we stop going back? The ideology of DEI is, well, actually, I'll ask you guys this question, and don't answer, but would you ever punish a son for the father's crimes? Would you ever punish a son for the father's crimes? The ideology of DEI is exactly that. Punish the son for the father's crimes. Except it's not punishing for the father's crimes, it's punishing for the great-great-great-grandfather's crimes. It can go back so far as to when slavery used to exist, which is many generations. The other thing is my opponent will attempt to argue that people face racial and gender barriers today. First, these barriers have mostly become social. As of most of the systemic barriers have been removed and their effects have slowly whittled away. Does everyone who fits within that group face the same barriers? Does everyone who has an identity face the same life experiences? DEI claims they do. That is racist and that is sexist. 30 seconds. So another thing is collective punishment. DEI involves collective punishment and collective reward. Okay, really quick. I'm sure there's someone in the 1940s that also did the same to a certain racial group. Collective punishment to the Jewish population in Germany. Also, the Rwandan genocide. Also, I'm pretty sure Article 33 of the Fourth Geneva Convention is about collective punishment, making it a war crime. I know Canada has its history with war crimes, but it appears today that with DEI, it seems we're keeping that up today. Finally, there are colleges that have policies that discriminate based on ethnicity, government funding that encourages discrimination, and government initiatives that spend billions of dollars for DEI, and guess where? Other countries.
4 minutes is up.
Thank you.
Well, each sides have gone for their intros. Now we're going to go into an open discussion where each will be able to argue and rebuttal each other's points. When the time is getting close to the end, I will give a 5-minute warning. So I'll leave it to start off the conversation.
Yeah. So first and foremost, I want to make clear that despite saying that I could argue for a bunch of things, I'm not necessarily about to argue for a bunch of those things. I don't necessarily. So, for example, a prime argument was you were talking about hiring quotas. A little closer in my mouth. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. So, like, I wouldn't argue for hiring quotas. I don't think that hiring quotas are the best metric. I do think that, for example, another metric is if you look at your entry level diversity positions and the ratios of, say, like how many. So, for example, a simple division is like gender. You look at how many men versus how many women you have at your entry level position. You might have a 50-50 mix. That's pretty good. But if you're looking at every year the amount of people that get leveled up, a lot of the people who get leveled up are male employees. And you notice that there's a discrimination between the hiring practices in terms of promotions and everything. Not necessarily because people are sexist, but because there exists simple systemic issues in how people are raised, how people are cultured, and how people have their own subconscious biases. People are more likely to garner favor to people who remind them of themselves, for whatever that reason may be. So if I am a straight white man who got certain advantages and now I'm a hiring manager, I'm more likely to give promotions to people who look or act like me. It's not that that is inherently like immoral, but it is bad for business more than anything else. It blinds you to potential talent pools. And if you are not like one of your main arguments is that DEI is about making it about race and talking about how important race and gender is, and it's not. It is about talking about how important subconscious bias and systemic factors in people's lives are, because it's
You measure subconscious biases though explicitly.
it's not about measuring them. It's about the fact that they are widespread and like completely self-evident in our world. Any person who's not like trying to prove a point can admit that they have their own subconscious biases. I have things I like more than other things. I have like I get uncomfortable at times where I'm like, this isn't a thing that should make me uncomfortable. What the heck? Or like somebody says something that I'm like, logically I don't have any issue with that, but it just rubs me the wrong way.
Okay, so it's not about measuring unconscious biases, which, yes, we all do have unconscious biases, which practically impossible it's so difficult to eliminate. How are we supposed to manage it? If we can't measure it, how do we manage it?
I can tell you what, it's not by completely eliminating the mandate to try and manage it. I'm not saying I know the perfect way to implement DEI policies. What I'm saying is that DEI policies are a noble endeavor that should be figured out. If we didn't figure out how to build nuclear bombs by being like we should have nuclear bombs and then just immediately having them. It took years of work to get there. And DEI programs are they may have the roots in affirmative action, but even the whole civil rights movement in terms of a societal scale is an incredibly fresh and new movement that we are still living with the consequences of. There are people alive today who predate the civil rights movement. So it's like to say that those factors have no impact on the world today because people our age were not born in a world where they were as prevalent as they were is just naive and it's a little bit self-centered.
I want to add one quick thing. So yes, you are right. There are people alive who do predate the civil wars, civil rights movement. That is true. However, if you look at the age, what is it? Like if they were 20 years old, they're like 80 now. I seriously doubt that they had
get into politics.
what?
Politics. I don't know if
Yeah, and I seriously doubt that a 20-year-old was making policies that went against Black people. Like, yes, that is true. However, the people who actually made those policies, long gone, long gone.
But in that sense, those policies, in that sense, it's not really. So I want to ask, um, with that, do you understand that we're on the state of DEI is progression builds over time, and one of the main things we can see at the start of the more where it kind of is already implemented into our society. You know who Jackie Robinson is? First black baseball player to ever join the. Oh, there you go. I thought you were saying that. Right. And in a sense, he is a DEI hire, right? He was given a chance to be put on the front stage in multiple states in America where he was just shunned. He was shunned. He was booed off games. It was still in the time of segregation. Still very much so. It was still segregation. I'm sorry if I don't know the exact year. It's still during segregation. What do you say over the course of time? Someone like him, he understood what type of life he was, and I'm not saying it's the same today, obviously not, but the same policies, the same things are in sorry, same the rules may have changed, but the game is still the same. The game is still where someone of whatever background it's not even about it's and just to touch on it's not always about race or sexuality, also the ability of a human in their own right? So some and just to further actually, you know what? I'll hand it to you.
All right. So you were mentioning a lot about like how we're building up a foundation. We're trying to get to a final point. Do you know why a lot of the philosophers started going backwards when we were talking about truth and what is false or true in history?
In what sense?
So basically, what happened is a lot of philosophers were trying to determine what the truth is and what is false, right? And what you had was a lot of different people trying to contribute to this idea. You started with a smaller foundation, and as more people added things, it started to get freaky. And there was a lot of different things adding onto it that became a whole mess. So certain people had to go back and try redefining the foundation that they could eventually end up actually leading to somewhere progressive, as opposed to just one big mess that actually had no direction. And so frankly, with DEI, what you see a lot of the time is maybe you want to say like the theory and the idea behind it is great, but sometimes the practices and actually quite frequently goes in very different directions because we don't actually have a solid.
Of the fact of the multiple different we have the different situations. As you may have said before, right? There's so many millions of people. It's something as simple as we have in our society, what is some I'm not even giving an example, something that it's so integrated in our society, we don't even think twice about it. The buttons that we have across campus, just for people that are wheelchair accessibility, that is a DEI thing. It's just not a person thing, but it's for those people. It's for convenience, right? We are the thing is it started with somewhere, and it was the catalyst that rolled to the top of the hill and gained momentum in certain. I'm not saying it's perfect, but there is ways that it's gone to.
Okay, so there's a difference between adding things that do not interfere with other people's ability to function and putting people in a place where it takes opportunity from other people. So yeah, the disability buttons that allow people to like that's where for automatic opening doors. That does not take away anyone else's ability to open a door. You mentioned the baseball, right? Yeah, you mentioned the baseball player. That's a DEI, just as the accessibility button the automatic doors is. The difference between those two, those are not the same because one opens the door, doesn't take anything away from anyone else. The other one is that DEI baseball player is taking away the opportunity from someone else.
No, he's not. It's
Yeah,
it,
yeah. A
it,
team has a limited number of players.
absolutely.
100%
So
it takes it.
so what the thing is, it's the Batten was playing race. He had the skills. If anything, he was better than a lot of his peers in his team, just outright. And that's the thing that's happening across the board, right? It's the fact that in something that a good friend of mine, right, he brought up in previous debates is he and this already an experiment that was done before, and he did himself. When he went to go for example, get hired at a job, he has two last names. One that's more ethnic sounding and one more Western, if you will, right? When going into that, he went to many job listings, right? He went out and put his name with both last names. One had an ethical one, and the amount of callbacks he got for the ethical name surprisingly low. And this has been done multiple studies have shown this. When you get the more Western, more conservative name, last name, he got a call back. He got a text back. There was more of that incentive. It's not the fact that it was racism. Maybe it was, maybe with some people. The truth of the matter of it was conformity. They're trying to say comfortability. They were comfortable. They were more of looking at that and like, you know what? I think I can relate to this person a little bit more than this person. But yeah, it doesn't take opportunity necessarily take opportunity, which may not be perfect. But it's still it's putting the court it's putting the ball in the hands of the players that want to play, that know how to play the game. It's not about they don't know how to play. It's not taking the ball away from a player that's been in the game. No, when you're playing for a game of basketball, it's not just LeBron shooting.
So that the little experiment that you did, right? When was
Not just myself.
yeah, but there's been other yeah.
It was,
So when was this?
I did mine personally during the stance of COVID. Others were done pre-COVID and done somewhere during post-COVID. There's multiple studies that done this.
Okay. Do you think that Canadian businesses would prioritize hiring Canadian citizens over non-Canadian citizens?
So here's the thing where I think again, this is getting into the nitty gritty of execution because the fact of the matter is businesses are always going to exploit the laws and grants they have access to. Should we necessarily be setting up DEI in such a way where people can just performatively hire a bunch of like junior engineers that never progress in their companies? No, that's not a smart, like, I'm not saying that we have the perfect hiring practices, but DEI practices and getting more people of diverse thought into industry is good for our industry. It is a competitive advantage because in like the thing that makes capitalism a successful system is the fact that it is fundamentally distributed. If one company doesn't have the right idea, there is diversity within the thought. And that and companies are strengthened by having diversity within the thought of the teams they have. For example, where is it? Research suggests, according to Instride and Achievers, that the diverse companies are 35% more likely to outperform their competitors, 70% more likely to capture new markets, and are 80. Yeah, that one's questionable. But it's also like so basically in new novel markets, which is the only real market that exists in this day and age. um, companies that have unique thinkers from a vast array of walks of life outperform those that have a monoculture. And the fundamental
Just
idea.
interject here. So basically, you mentioned right that with more diversity, you have greater success, right? Is that something that you can actually see all the way through? And sorry, it's not really just a question, it's because there are situations where you have like policing or firefighting, right? Those are situations where if you were to introduce diversity in the sense of gender, you might actually see biological differences that can lead to the difference of somebody's life being saved or not. And right, like obviously in a business situation where you're trying to lead to a certain outcome, you introduce diversity, that will almost always lead to something that's better.
I would like to distance myself from any specifics of how we policing or whatever. I think that that is in and of itself a massive issue. And more the fundamental idea that I'm trying to illustrate is that humanity is not strong because human beings are really good at what they do. Humanity is strong because human beings do a lot of different things. We are able to do all of those different things together. And when we successfully, but the reality is in order to be successful, two things have to happen. First of all, you have to have the opportunity to actually do something. And second of all, to be considered successful, you have to succeed according to a metric that other people are measuring. So all of the people who have most of the wealth use the same metrics that got them to be successful and only measure other people's success by those same metrics. It creates an optimization for one culture and one way of life that hinders our ability to be adaptable to a rapidly changing world.
So I just want to add to the thing, like I mentioned earlier, if you want to stay away from the situation where it's like a defense where biological differences could be very prevalent, we could also just look at like who is profiting the most from DEI, because recently it's become a huge debate. There's been a lot of studies released on this. U.S. Department of Labor, McKinsey and Company, and other news sources from different sides of the political aisle are saying that actually white women have been one of the largest earners from affirmative action employment and have gotten more promotions than their ethnic opposites, right? We have Women in the Workplace report found that although white women hold 30% of senior leadership roles, Black women and Latinas hold just 4% and 3% respectively. At every stage of the corporate pipeline, meaning entry level all the way to C-suite, while women follow directly after white men. For entry level, out of the 48% of women, 28% are white. And for C-suite, out of the 29% of women, 20% are 22% are white. So if the practice of DEI is supposed to lead to a wide range of people diverse getting in, then what kind of diversity are we seeing when the next thing after the white man is the white woman?
What I would call that is progress. I think that that is exactly how society progressed. I think we started with having women's suffrage, which is basically white women got to vote. Then we had the civil rights movement, and then we got the rest of everything. And I think that basically the idea, like again, the fundamental issue is that DEI is not like we have to give it time to mature. And yes, there are issues with it. And yes, we should be doing researches on why there are these issues. I'm not a supporter of like cancel culture or scientific censorship, but I do think that DEI is an initiative that works and it's progressing towards a desirable end. So, for example, part of what I'm saying is like you talk a lot about DEI in terms of hiring practices, and part of where I would say is that a big issue with DI right now is that it's not being implemented on management or organizational like structure sides outside of just hiring. They're only doing DEI not because they believe in it, but because they can get the grants. And the way that we are setting up the grants are not effectively optimizing for that. So, for example, a study revealed that only 12% of organizations integrated DEI into their business strategies, and a scant 6% incorporated DEI into succession planning and management processing. Furthermore, 78% of organizations have relatively immature DEI initiatives.
First of all, when you're talking about, you mentioned the women's suffrage. I'm going to touch on the 2 points, the grants, and then I'm going to touch on the grants after I touch on women's suffrage. The reason that women have been able to enter the workplace, there was advocating for it. However, there was advocating for it because the workplaces themselves were a lot safer. They were safer for women. And if you look at the type of jobs that they were advocating for the safer jobs. fine. I don't care if you wanna advocate for that, fine. But here's the thing, they didn't get into the job solely based off of them advocating for it. They were safer because people were good at the job, especially safety management. They were like, "Hey, how can we make this safer? You have someone who's qualified, not DEI, you have someone who's qualified, we make it safer, and then the workplace becomes more desirable for women."
I would like to counter this because I'm no expert on women's history, but my understanding is that women were largely implemented in the workforce because we sent all the men to war and we didn't have workers. And then companies that integrated female employees had far vaster hiring pools, thus outperformed other ones, as did countries that implemented women into their military strategies by incorporating them into forces and all these other things, which circles back to my fundamental point of the fact that human rights follow from humans providing economical and or military and or political advantage to the systems that they are present in. Right now, we are seeing the rise of systems where like humans are no longer going to be valuable economically or militarily, at least based off of the drone debate earlier, right?
Fair enough, fair.
And
And fair enough with I think that there is definitely multiple reasons why women were able to enter the workforce. Okay, when it comes to the government funding though, so there's something called the Green Municipal Fund, which is something that municipalities can apply for to get funding when they're coming up with a project. So so for example, it says, quote, "How will you assess potential impacts of equity deserving groups in your project?" That's one of the questions you have to answer. How are you going to assess the impact on equity deserving groups? Second, this is the heavy hitter. So when the project is assessed on integration of principles of anti-racism, equity, and inclusion and or reconciliation, and it's assessed on potential to generate slash fairly distribute economic benefits. This is on the paper. For example, fair community wealth building where economic opportunities are prioritized for members of equity deserving groups. And equity deserving groups are Indigenous, newcomers to Canada, non-binary persons, people living with disabilities, racialized persons, and women. So to be clear, when it comes to the idea of government funding, it is clear that they are putting a push out there to prioritize equity deserving groups. Now here's the thing. Are straight white men not equity deserving?
I think that the whole point of this is that the system we currently live within is a system built largely by straight white men. So straight white men have an advantage.
Is that a bad thing though?
It's not a bad thing. It's just that we have an advantage in it. And if we want a stronger system for the system's sake, not for straight white men's sake, it benefits everyone to involve more diversity and inclusion. It's not an attack on straight white men. It's just that we have advantages that other people don't have advantages. And I would say that it's the same. I would say that a proper DEI program that is moving in the future would see would value somebody like an Eminem character born in a poor, impoverished community who doesn't have proper access to education more valuable than somebody like Ben Carson, black brain surgeon, just because he's black. But I think that the reality is that we don't have systems smart enough to do that right now, and we need to make broad stroke actions to remedy the fact that there are systemic forces. If we don't create counter systemic forces, we are just submitting to the will of systems that old people desired. I'm gonna censor myself. Sorry.
Can I mention something right now? So I was actually looking through some DEI educational material that's used to teach the next couple of people who are going to take DEI management positions and then end up enforcing these positions. And do you know what this kind of material actually discusses? Material discusses taking actions that don't lead to temporary solution, complete solutions. And so when we're constantly taking solutions that are not necessarily going to be temporary, things that we're taking big steps to eventually get to some goal that won't necessarily encompass that whole step, we're just doing temporary solutions. And the rest of the material in the course talks about things like white privilege and furthering those topics, which have been proven to cause a lot of arguments between people who are white and feel like they're being attacked. How would you, I guess, um, justify how these big steps are going to lead to a full solution when in general many of them are temporary?
So I would say, prime example, uh, take a look at the biological sciences. Do you know what a standard biological science textbook looked like 100 years ago? They probably had a lot of rigged up things to say in there, and that the iterative process of different people interacting with this research and being like, hey, actually measuring the skull is not a great way to like see if people have a moral chunk of their brain or not. Like, what we had to make these really bad ideas in the name of progressing science to get to a point where science has been progressed, and now we get to like build our world off of it. Now we live in a world with like a green agriculture, green revolution, where we have an abundance of food and we can support a 9 billion plus population.
Would you say our systems have become better nowadays, that we don't have to do that trial and error phase? Largely, the reason why there was so much trial and error in the last century was because we didn't really have that foundation. And now that we
I
have
would
a
say that we
foundation,
don't have that foundation in the social sciences in the same way that we have that biological science.
but doesn't a lot
We're
of stuff
building that foundation.
doesn't a lot of stuff that DEI encompass follow a lot of like moral and ethical claims that we've discussed for how many years?
Hold on. So your first thing to address is that scientific method is plainly it's always a correction. There's multiple steps, and when you get to the end, when you get to a point where okay, this is a conclusion, you go right back to the top. Why? Because that's how scientific method do, and this is used across the board. And that's right in the sense of our healthcare, right? In as simple as not even healthcare in the sense of actually science that came about to help any people. It's pretty much it's proven that the science for the healthcare that we have it's very marginal, very uh, for a certain minority, not minority of that more or less was the majority at the time, still is the majority of now. It's the fact of that issue is what we're trying to dismantle. It's something as simple as that. You brought up earlier, Jacob, the fact of we go back. We have to, and sorry, you as well, Anthony. Going back, previous philosophers went back to try to find the right answer. This is the same strategy in that sense. Going back and recorrecting, starting from a different thing. Okay, going back. PI is not one way road. It's whole city. City
Yep.
of roads that come back and it's interwoven so deeply that if you just abolish it, all and that's your full stance. But if that is well, okay. I want to and bring up some recent news. Trump getting rid of ADI and all these certain situations. He's also getting rid of history, getting rid of progress that have come forth. Right? It's just plain and simple. As
But do
something
you know some of the things he's actually pulled funding from?
absolutely,
We have DEI themed musicals, transgender comic book projects,
great.
transgender opera.
And
Like,
that's great. And that's great because why? Why do you, what is your opposition to something? It's keeping that in the loop, right? You even said earlier, oh, we don't have a straight flag. All of human history, for majority, I'm sorry, not even, you know what? I'll take that back. For our present Western history, let's say ever since the biblical era, since then to now, right? There's been especially in the Western world, we have gone off of a very a biblical stance of the world, right? It's just plain. Everyone will agree, right? It's just to understand that this is how it was. This is how it is. Now it's continuing. It's not that, but then that's not what Canada is. Say before another debate, this is the melting pot of the world. One of the greatest countries that brings all these different people together. This is labeling those people that may have history and due to these other or religious or otherwise doctrines that have been spread across time it's preventing those from taking hold and still consuming the people that are trying to be themselves, trying to be,
Can I make a
human.
comment on the so
Absolutely,
you
go ahead.
mentioned Canada is a melting pot, right? Would you say that in the last decade or so that racism has actually gotten worse in Canada? Because frankly,
Why do you think that is?
what I'm seeing is that we've actually started to take in a lot more immigrants, and then as a result, what has happened is there's become crises where people who are actually living here for many years can't afford housing and things like that. And so now you're starting to see a larger divide where people are like, hey, we don't want to be a melting pot anymore. We want to find what our values are as a nation. We want to figure out what we can do as people who live here and then eventually get to a solution where everyone's happy, as opposed to just claiming more and more people from different ethnicities and races and cultures that we can't actually support or actually stand for one thing together.
I can't entirely speak for all the policies that have been for immigration, but for people that are my skin tone and have an accent, right, and or they're just ethnically different in every sense of the situation. Yes, there's a lot. Yes, we have taken so many that it's flooding our market. It's a fact that there's a we will switch in the society, and this is history. This is the changing of hands of not the good but the bad. We are continuing the cycle of changing the hands of what one race or one identity we want with that. It's always something new. Yes, there's a large immigration immigrant population. Absolutely, I agree. But what that's what makes us the melting pot in the world. Yes, there's a benefit to it. Right? There's all this housing crisis. There's been a little bit of a mm, misuse of some of that policies, but at the same breath, we understand that for those people that come here seeking for a better life, you're just you know what I mean. They just want to elevate, get into a world where they thought this is what Canada was. We're destroying our own name by being the way we are. It's a societal thing that we set.
I know, but when you're saying we're going to take these big steps in DEI and we're eventually going to, fix it all up, these like mistakes that we might make, and then eventually lead to a bigger solution, how are you going to fix the lives of people when you take in a lot of people into a country of different ethnicities? How long do you think it's actually going to take to fix that? Because frankly, some of the damage that has been done by trying to integrate a larger number of people from different cultures into another place is that right? We're going to have to take a lot of time to get housing up. And if you look at what they say in elections, unfortunately, it doesn't seem like we're going to be stopping immigration. We're going to still take people in, maybe not to the same amount, but that doesn't necessarily fix the issue, which is that we don't have housing.
So
So that issue is just going to stay as bad as it is for what?
if I could reply, this is exactly the point I was trying to make about DEI serving as a red herring in the modern political climate. People aren't upset about immigrants. They're upset about housing. And the shortage of housing is influenced by the massive immigration. And I do have serious issues with lack of economic foresight in the way we did our immigration policy for political clout. But that being said, that housing issue exists for a multitude of reasons, including people's not like the fact that nobody wants to build cheap housing because you can make way more off of a unit by building luxury apartments. The fact that private equity firms like to buy the fact that we just all
Do
live.
you agree that there's a multiple reasons why housing is expensive? But you said that no one's really upset with immigration.
What I'm saying is that the popular frustration with immigration is more a manifestation of people's frustration with housing because it is much harder to be mad at the abstract housing market and decisions of a myriad of different financiers who don't work together than it is to be mad at the guy who's speaking a different language next to you on the bus.
Okay, so first of all, I'm pretty sure all of us have recognized that the racism towards Indians has gone up. Why? Because of immigration. Here's the thing. Yes, people actually are upset with immigration, and it's actually getting taken out on the people. I just want to make it clear that a lot of people who have the problem with immigration, I mean, I can't speak for everyone, but people who actually have a problem with immigration are more upset with the government that are allowing immigration, not exactly the people who are immigrating. Second thing is, people are actually very, very, very upset with immigration, especially when you see what's going on in the UK, Ireland. Dude, the cultural difference and the issues, especially with like stuff like when you have people who come from countries that are in conflict and immigrate to countries like Canada, the US, and the UK, you can very clearly see that there are social issues. It's not just housing. People are upset with the immigration because there are a lot of social issues, especially when letting in criminals into this country.
Gentlemen, as much as I would like to this fire debate to continue, you guys have 5 minutes left. So I would like each of you to go to your conclusions and statements out.
What time is it?
It's like 8:55. I was going to cut it 5 minutes earlier, but it was going really good.
Oh, another 15 more minutes?
15 more minutes? All right. The votes have been in.
Did I do with the crowd? All right.
You good for 15 more minutes?
If you don't mind, just re-saying that last little 2 to 3 seconds.
Yeah. So people do have a problem with immigration, not just housing, it's also culture. And you can see that with the UK, you can see that in Canada, you can see that in Brampton, you can see that in the States as well. And to be clear, people will take it out on the immigrants, even though it's the government's fault.
That's okay.
No, absolutely no. Obviously, them taking it out on the immigrants, absolutely not okay.
And as much, it's one thing. For example, Premier.4.relay. It's we're electing the people that are in. Let's not. Trudeau's out of the picture now.
His Liberal Party is very much still in, though.
Absolutely.
He's not a dictator. Keep in mind, the member of parliament, the Liberal Party, are the people who actually vote on policies. So if you don't like immigration, it's not.
I know. I'm just saying that to the president. Right. I'm just So when it comes to that, right? It's the fact that they have no choice but to attack immigrants, right? And it's also the fact of social media is one of the causes for a lot of this harm. I can pull up my phone, open Instagram right now, and one video down, and it's all it takes to see an absolute mockery of maybe it's not. I'm not Indian, but it's still a mockery of people posting life. Right? There's mockery of Sri Lankans. It's a mockery of all. We are all put under the same under the same label, right?
Focus on the conversation. Don't focus on the screen.
I don't even think people at home can see it.
Elon Musk is an illegal immigrant.
Focus on the conversation. Don't worry about what's on there.
I would like to reply to the previous point. Basically, yeah, people are feeling like their culture is under attack, and they're feeling like immigration is destroying the things that makes England England, or Ireland Ireland, or Canada Canada. That is a thing. But the reality is that that's not happening because big governments just love immigrants. It's happening because we're not having enough kids, and we have bad population demographics. So it's like an economic necessity, essentially. But my point is basically that that sense that my culture is being eliminated. That in order for big business and big government to reach the quotas and the metrics they're optimizing for, that's coming at the cost of my culture and my peoples and my way of life. And the fact that you think that that is wrong and you're getting fucked over in that situation, I tried. In that situation, in that situation, that is the exact experience that DEI is trying to remedy, because that is the experience of every other cultures and every other people's trying to make it in a world that we have brought to their doorsteps. Not that they it's not like a lot of them hopped on the boat from Africa to come to America because they thought it'd be great opportunities. You know what I mean? We went over there and we made it a shared world. And now we're forcing them to live with the consequences of sharing the world. And we have to live with those consequences too. And DEI is the recognition that we are sharing this world. To say it's a failed endeavor is to say that we need to stop pretending that there's other people.
Really quick. When he says we, and this was brought up earlier, say, should we blame the son for the action of the father, or in this case, the grandfather? Absolutely not. It's once again like how my teammate here is explaining. The fact of the matter is, it's above us in that sense. Yes, you may say they didn't have a choice, all that. But at the end of the day, it's something as simple as being able to put everyone on the same field and still play the same game. And I mean, look to each other and oh, you're human, I'm human, right? We're having a humanitarian crisis level of almost every level, from third world countries not being able to provide food for the starving of the war right beside them, or to our war, or to the society we have here, bullying and rating other races just because they came here on the promise of, but blaming them without real consequence. They don't have just because they have no way of blaming us. The fact that culture has always changed and will always morph to the people around. It's the fact that are you saying that let's go beyond before Canada was
Can we
even
just make a
colonized?
comment quick on what you were
Really
saying?
quick, I just wanted to wrap up. Even before Canada was colonized, what did we do here? We do not, I wouldn't say we, but what did the forefathers of this nation do? They wiped out the indigenous. We changed the culture. Do you guys think that just happens? No, it's an intentional thing. In that sense, it was pretty extreme, but culture changes. After the Second World War, things changed. Culture became different. As it hit the 1980s and 90s, there was a progression and acceptance of people understand that now that there is not the fear of global war, more people came out of the shadows and revealed we understand that science has progressed with it. We understood what these people. As simple as left-handedness was seen as a heinous thing. As soon as it was accepted, why do you think it increased in uh, population with the people that were left-handed?
So is that an actual question?
I'm just saying. Sorry, rhetorically saying. Right? It's the fact that acceptance over time of different things and integrating those things into our culture allowed.
Right. You mentioned like the whole entire thing is like seeing a human as a human, right? Would you say that like in that sense, if I'm looking at someone, I'm saying not that they're human, but I'm saying that they're a white person or black person, specific gender. Do you not think that after we name all of these specific points, that we eventually get a point where we're actually just creating more segregation because we want to eliminate the bringing all people together, but actually just like dividing them into
It's
different.
not division. It's understanding that we're pointing out historically and what our societally or we're warring against. Well, it's very I get it, and it's something that's ingrained in our culture to the point that a lot of us don't see it. I myself didn't see it for a long time. It took time to actually understand what's going on the level that we don't always see. Day to day, what we don't see.
Yeah, but the thing is, if like bringing back to our example of Canada, clear distinction, and even in America, we can see this as well. The amount of segregation and division has only increased over the
Why
couple
do
of
you think
years,
the
and that
division's
is
happening? Because there's under acceptance of one, the sciences, the changing of culture. There's
yeah, but
absolutely
it's the massive changes in cultures and policies that have led to
culture will
segregation.
change, and that's the thing. It's dependent on what people we bring over, and also the fact of the sciences. Understanding that
Well, you or when you're saying people bringing over, are we referring back to slave trade?
I'm just saying in the sense of it. We're talking about immigrants right now, a little bit, right? So understand that why the culture change is because of that, right? It's not necessarily a bad thing, right? What's wrong with having a culture that's just no matter what, at one point we're going to hit a cap of some what 10 billion to 12 billion. Where are they all going to go? It's
Culture change, you keep mentioning culture change, saying that that's okay with the culture changing all the immigration, right? But then you also mentioned the indigenous. I'm a little confused. So is culture change good or bad? Because what Christopher Columbus did was wipe
absolutely
out a lot of the indigenous culture. You're saying culture change is good. Are you justifying Christopher Columbus's actions?
This is get off the point. What we're saying is that change is real and it's unstoppable and it happens every day. And the reality is
Why force it with DEI policies?
because the fact of the matter is that this change is being driven by forces that are understandable at a systems level. If we do not intentionally create counter forces, our lives and the experience of the entire species and of our kids and their futures is decided by factors we decided that's too much effort to control. We don't want to have say over that. We decide that we should have say over our food security. We decide that we should have say over our national security. We decided that we should have say over our right to vote and et cetera, et cetera. But we shouldn't have right over like how culture grows. We shouldn't it should just like see what happens instead of saying maybe there's stuff to protect. Maybe like
I know, but going back to like the point we mentioned about who's profiting from DEI, the truth of the matter is that we're not shifting into a good position. In fact, we're just seeing more people from a specific
this is a
taking a position.
this is where I think that people are misattributing to DEI, which is a motive and an ethics set forth by the government and how they should design policies as the culture wars, which are a major phenomenon happening. And the main reason that major culture war is happening is not the consequence of the public sector, it's the consequence of the private sector and social media companies make a ton of money off of making people mad. The fact that we all
Canada's government-funded media. You're saying private
no,
the
but
media? No. Canada, if
this
you're
is
talking about culture war in Canada, sorry, but the government sends billions every year to CBC, like,
yes,
or our,
yes,
yeah, our
and
government
Mark
media.
Zuckerberg makes billions every year by making me pissed off with
Or at Facebook or whatever.
Okay, but you're talking about the media, and you're saying private media. Sorry, but culture.
the fact of the matter is that the industry of today is largely based off of data collection and manipulation of the that is how money is made in the world today, and that business model has found that the way to keep people primarily engaged by work of biology is we look longer at things that make us mad or sad than we look at things that make us happy or feel like part of the community.
Yeah, that I'm not really disagreeing with. Yeah, so that's fair.
At this point, we can pretty much get to conclusions. I'm gonna give everyone about the total of 5 minutes each to give their concluding statements.
Would you like to give a minute to each other just to make the closing statements? 30 seconds?
All right, so is each side ready for their conclusion statements? All right, which one want to go first?
Go ahead.
All right. So we're just going to touch on, I guess, a point you made, and then continue from there. We mentioned a lot of like slave trades and stuff, bringing people into the country in North America. Well, the slave trade has been seen like all across the world. There's the Balkan slave trade, which was really big. Slave trading happened in Africa. It happened in Asia. It was a big thing. The issue, though, is that we don't see the same kind of standards that we hold people to in North America in those other countries. We say here, okay, slavery happened, white people oppressing people of color, and we say that we have to suppress white people in a way to kind of let um, let the rest of the cultures get up to where the white people have pushed them down from. And as a result, what we end up doing is holding one race accountable while all the others are not in their own countries. And I don't think that that kind of solution making is fair. And I don't think that that's something that's going to lead to a full time solution in the future. Of course, also we see a lot of the time that you guys are mentioning that DI is, of course, these big steps. We're trying to end up getting to a final solution in the future, right? But you also say at the same time that we have to be taking steps back in a way that we're going to make mistakes over the way, and we have to go back, fix those, and then keep going until we eventually lead to a position that is very good, right? And I think most people would agree with that. The issue, though, is we don't see a reversion. We see a constant progression in one direction that constantly gets worse. And a great example of this would be how movies, TV shows, and games have been progressing. You see in movies that we now have the Snow White movie that released, which has been constantly complained about for forever, and as a result, the movie failed horribly. And then even further than that, now we have the Harry Potter remake that's coming out, where they've decided to cast Severus Snape, which has literally been explained as a pale character with black hair, as a black man. And so a lot of people are starting to say, hey, haven't we noticed that these pushes in DEI that we tried have not been working? maybe we should go back, take this step, and fix things. But unfortunately, what we haven't done is fix those things. We've just kept racing forward in the hopes that DEI will eventually lead to a progressive solution. And in reality, it hasn't. For the games like I mentioned, one of them, Concord, was literally released, and then within a month or a couple of weeks, was shut down the servers because no one wanted to play it anymore. It was just completely DEI mess. Um, yeah, that's all.
All right. We, as Canadians, we are a first world country. United States is a first world country. We set the precedent for the rest of the world. People follow us. It's the reason why we must begin start going trial and error. Medical, if we want to go to the medical field, the medical revolution that started here in the States and Canada has been now applied across the world and then elevated in other countries as we brought their um, standard of living here. It's a progression starting from us. We are in any if we go to any third world country and say, "Hey, if I'm British, like everyone," and when everyone hears that I'm Canadian, I don't have the same ability to talk like them and everything, but they're going to look to me like I'm a novelty of some sort. But that's the thing is that because we're held in such high regard. And to touch just a little bit on the whole video game stuff, it's the fact of the matter of okay. No, just check. No, it's respect. No, it's respect. You okay? Okay.
Gentlemen, let's all finish our points.
The reasons for this is a deeper issue. An issue significant historical contexts arise where minorities were placed in environments silent or purely word of mouth. Progression was halted and forced into situations that they could not reach the margins of the others and other socioeconomic stages. The power that society holds and what we believe to be true or wish to hold as our values are easily taken over and easily take over the very laws we have in place. Society fears that DEI has taken and will continue to these are capable, talented minds and hand them to quote unquote the lesser. If that is not your stance, then fair, but it's something to be addressed. I believe it is an issue of perspective. The job market. The standard name, sounding, and appearance, holding straight and white are given on the average of a pass without being looked through completely. In this case, the white man being addressed not necessarily on merit or skill, but on the baseline aspects of one's appearance. We understand that no one policy is perfect or flawless. In a world of many barriers, this is aimed to
Oh, give it up for our debaters. Oh my. Woo, woo. Damn, that was ish. Let's give it up for these two.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed our very intense debate there. Another round of applause for my teammates here. And for all of you for attending and staying long past what we said we would. Thank you all for coming out. No, 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 no. It's okay. It's okay. It's over. The war is over. Okay, okay. I will say. Wait, ladies and gentlemen, hold on. One sec, Daniel, everyone. This is the final debate of this season. Next week we're doing a little movie night. I'd encourage y'all to come and at 3:30 on Wednesday in the Conical. Snacks, cookies, the whole bunch. Jacob here, I want to give a special shout out. He's the founder that has made all this happen. He is the very man that set into motion early last year, in January, I believe.
January, February, even past that, and held the debate club even when members weren't. When September of last year rolled around, myself and many others came around. He supported us with, even if me and him have very different worldviews and everything, but still he looked at me as a friend and offered me the position of president, which I hold today. Fortunately, he'll be leaving us this semester, and it's off the rest of us to carry the fire. For that, the team has put together something special. Nai here went above and beyond and did something for him.
Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. Also, shout out to Jacob for starting this. You know, we wouldn't be here if we didn't have the idea to just go and start with the entire thing. You know, we're really grateful to have you, and majority of us know that you are going to be leaving. It's been an honor for us to have for to be our president. I'm sorry. I hope that all of your future endeavors are grand, all your goals come true. And so I got the entire the entire club to sign this board for you that you could take home and put on your wall. It's you. It's you, it's you. You wanna say anything or?
Honestly, the only thing I can really say is just thank you guys so very much. And I know that the debate club is going to be in good hands next 3, 4 years for sure. Now, honestly, like without you guys, the debate club wouldn't exist anymore. So seriously, thank you guys so much. It means a lot.
So just to be a little funny, may the force be with you, my friend. Yeah, I'm definitely not your father. I mean, okay. All right, everybody. There's a couple of sliders, the pork sliders for the ones that can eat pork. There's some pork sliders available. Go ahead and treat yourself to it. I'm hungry. I'm gonna eat now. But once again, everyone, thank you. Have a good night, and we'll see you next time. Peace out.